Apple just made the Mac Mini way more dangerous for local AI, and I do not mean Apple Intelligence. I do not mean summarizing emails. I do not mean asking Siri to rewrite a message with slightly more fake enthusiasm. I mean the thing developers actually care about. Running models on your own desk, no API bill, no rate limit, no random downgrade, no company deciding your prompt is too weird, no sending private code, private logs, or private client data into someone else's server. The new M6 Mac Mini starts at $899. Apple says it has up to 4 times the AI performance of the M4 model, and the important part is not even the neural engine. The important part is the same thing that keeps making normal gaming PCs look weirdly bad at local AI. Memory. Because local AI is not a graphics card contest anymore, it is a memory contest. And that tiny silver box might now be the most sensible local AI computer for a huge number of developers. Not the most powerful, not the cheapest, not the machine I would buy if I had unlimited money and no respect for my electricity bill, but the sensible one, and that is the annoying part. Because if you are a developer trying to run models locally, the new Mac Mini is not just another Apple spec bump. It is Apple accidentally walking into the local AI hardware argument with a very small machine and making a lot of gaming rigs look badly designed for the job. Hey, don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this. Now, back to the video. So the headline is simple. Apple has announced a new Mac Mini with the M6 chip. The reported starting price is $899. It keeps the tiny Mac Mini body, but the inside is new. The M6 version is reported with a 12-core CPU, a 12-core GPU, and a dual neural engine setup. Apple is claiming up to 4 times faster AI performance compared with the M4 Mac Mini. Storage is reported as faster as well, and the box finally sounds more like a serious little node than a cute desktop ornament. But do not get distracted by the marketing sentence. 4 times faster AI sounds huge. It also means almost nothing until you ask which AI. If Apple means some core ML workload that hits the neural engine beautifully, great. If you're running a quantized coding model in llama LM Studio, llama.cpp, MLX, or whatever local stack you like this month, the real story is more complicated. Some tasks love the GPU, some tasks are memory bandwidth limited, some tasks care about prompt processing, some tasks are just waiting for the next token to come out, and some tasks will ignore the neural engine entirely because your model runtime is not using it. So I would not buy this machine because Apple said 4 times. I would buy it because the Mac Mini has become one of the few consumer computers where the shape of the machine actually matches the shape of local AI. Small, quiet, always plugged in, good CPU, good GPU, shared memory. Low power draw, no laptop battery anxiety, no giant tower under the desk, and no 12GB graphics card pretending it is ready for a 30 billion parameter model. That is the real angle. The M6 Mac Mini is interesting because it is not trying to be a gaming PC, it is trying to be a dense little Apple silicon box. And for local AI, that may be exactly the right kind of boring. Most people compare computers like this. How fast is the CPU? How fast is the GPU? How many cores? How many teraflops? How many benchmark points? That is fine for a lot of computing. It is not fine for local AI. For local AI, the first question is much more brutal. Can the model fit? That is it. Before speed, before vibes, before fan noise, before benchmark screenshots, before anyone starts arguing about whether Apple is overpriced, the model has to fit in memory. A language model is a huge pile of numbers. When you run it, those numbers have to sit somewhere fast enough that the chip can keep using them. On a normal gaming PC, you usually have system RAM and separate graphics memory. The graphics card might be extremely fast, but it might only have 8, 12, 16, or 24 gigabytes of memory. That number is the wall. You can have a very expensive GPU and still hit the wall immediately. And once the model does not fit cleanly, the experience falls apart. Maybe it spills into system memory, maybe the context cache gets squeezed, maybe the model technically runs, but each token arrives so slowly that you start questioning your life choices. That is why local AI hardware advice is so messy. The best gaming computer is not automatically the best local AI computer. A cheap used workstation with lots of memory might run a bigger model than a flashy gaming tower. A Mac with unified memory might load something a normal GPU cannot hold, and a tiny Mac Mini can sometimes be more useful than a machine that looks much more serious. Apple Silicon uses unified memory. The CPU and GPU share the same memory pool. That does not make it magic. But it does mean local AI can use a larger shared pool instead of being trapped behind the VRAM number on a graphics card. That is the reason developers keep looking at Macs for local models. It is not because we all suddenly became Apple marketing interns. It is because a lot of AI workloads are less impressed by raw GPU horsepower than people expect and more impressed by having enough fast memory available to keep the whole thing moving. If the M6 Mac Mini gives you a strong enough chip and enough unified memory in a small box, it becomes a very practical local AI machine. Not because Apple discovered local AI, because the hardware architecture was already pointing in that direction. Now, here's where I'm going to be rude about the $899 version. The base M6 Mac Mini is probably not the one you should buy for local AI. It might be the one Apple wants in the headline. It might be totally fine as a normal development machine. It might run small models nicely, but for local AI, the base memory configuration is where good intentions go to die. If it starts with 16 gigabytes of unified memory, that is enough for lightweight local AI. It is not enough for the reason people get excited about local AI desktops. 16 gigabytes means you're in small model territory. 7 billion parameter models, some 8 billion model, maybe a 14 billion model if you're careful and quantize aggressively, you can do useful work there. Do not let anyone tell you small models are useless. Small models are great for commit messages, quick code explanations, command suggestions, short summaries, local search helpers, and throwaway drafts. But 16 gigabytes is not where the Mac Mini becomes scary. The Mac Mini becomes scary when you can spec enough memory to run bigger models without the whole system feeling like it is breathing through a straw. 32 gigabytes is the first configuration I would seriously consider for local AI. That is the point where the machine starts to feel like more than a toy. And if Apple offers more than 32 gigabytes on the higher configuration, that is where the conversation gets genuinely interesting. Because local AI is greedy. Today, you think you only need a 7 billion model, then you try a 14 billion model and it follows instructions better, then you try a 32 billion model and suddenly the smaller one feels a bit too eager to hallucinate confidence. And now the cheapest Mac Mini is no longer cheap. That is the Apple tax. Nobody likes admitting the machine that makes sense is usually not the headline price. It is the version with enough memory. And Apple charges like memory was mined from a meteor. So my opinion is simple. Do not buy the new Mac Mini for local AI because the base price looks clean. Buy it only if you're willing to spend on memory. Otherwise, you're buying the local AI idea, not the local AI machine. The most obvious comparison is a gaming PC. And this is where people get weirdly emotional because on paper, a Windows desktop with an Nvidia GPU can absolutely destroy a Mac in raw AI throughput. If you have a high-end Nvidia card with lots of VRAM, CUDA support, and the right model runtime, it can be brutally fast. I'm not going to pretend the Mac Mini beats that. It does not. If you already own a machine with a 24 gigabyte or 32 gigabyte GPU, the M6 Mac Mini is probably not your performance upgrade. Your GPU is still the monster, but most developers do not have that machine. Most people have something much more awkward, a laptop with integrated graphics, a desktop with an older GPU, a gaming card with 8 or 12 gigabytes of VRAM, or a machine that is technically powerful, but sounds like it is filing a tax return every time a model loads. That is where the Mac Mini starts winning. Not by being faster in every benchmark, by being less annoying. The normal gaming PC local AI experience has 3 problems. First, VRAM is tight. Second, the software stack is powerful but fiddly. Third, the power and noise can be absurd for something you want running all day. The Mac Mini attacks all 3. Unified memory gives you a more flexible pool. Apple Silicon local AI tooling has become much better, especially with MLX and llama.cpp support, and the machine is small and quiet enough that leaving it on as a local model server feels normal. That last part matters more than people admit. The best local AI setup is not the one you benchmark once. It is the one you leave running. It is the one your editor can talk to. It is the one that answers boring questions all day without making you think about cost. It is the one that can sit next to your monitor and act like infrastructure. A gaming PC often feels like a machine you wake up for heavy work. The Mac Mini feels like a machine that can just be there. That is a different category. And for developers, boring infrastructure wins more often than flashy hardware. The harder comparison is the M4 Mac Mini, because the M4 Mac Mini was already annoyingly good. It was small, it was efficient, it had the redesigned little case, it was already a very capable development box. And for a lot of local AI workloads, it was already enough if you bought enough memory. So should M4 owners care about M6? Probably less than Apple wants them to. If you already have an M4 Mac Mini with 32 gigabytes of memory and your local models feel good, I would not panic upgrade because a new chip exists. That is the trap. Local AI makes everyone feel behind because model names keep changing and benchmarks keep getting louder. But if your machine runs the models you actually use, you are not behind. You're done, at least for now. The M6 matters more for people who are about to buy a machine anyway. If you're choosing between a discounted M4 and a new M6, the question is lifespan, not just speed. The M6 is probably the better long-term buy if the price gap is not ridiculous, but the M4 is not suddenly bad. Apple does this thing where yesterday's great machine feels emotionally obsolete. The second a new one gets announced, do not fall for that. For local AI, memory still beats generation number. A 32 GB M4 is more interesting to me than a 16 GB M6. That is the cleanest way to say it. New chip with too little memory loses to older chip with enough memory. Every time. Now, the Mac Studio is the real boss fight. If the Mac Mini is the sensible local AI box, the Mac Studio is a box you buy when you want to stop compromising, especially if the new studio configurations go much higher on unified memory. For big local models, memory is everything. If you want to run large mixture models, big coding models, large vision models, or multiple services at once, the studio can live in a totally different class. It is also much more expensive, and that is why the Mac Mini matters. The Mac Studio is the machine that makes local AI feel serious. The Mac Mini is the machine that makes local AI feel normal. Those are different jobs. If you're building a local AI lab, buying hardware for a team, running heavy inference, or replacing a pile of cloud calls with on-premise tooling, the studio makes sense. If you were one developer who wants a private coding assistant, a local model server, a cheap experiment box, and a machine that can run all day without becoming the main character in your office, the Mini is more interesting. The studio is the dream. The Mini is the thing people might actually buy, and honestly, I think that is why this announcement matters. Local AI does not become mainstream because a few people buy monster machines. It becomes mainstream when the normal developer desktop quietly becomes good enough. That is what the Mac Mini is pushing toward. It is not saying every developer needs a local AI workstation. It is saying the local AI workstation can become a small box next to your keyboard. That changes the mental model. Now, before this turns into local AI fan fiction, cloud models are still better for a lot of work. Frontier coding models are better at hard reasoning, long, messy refactors, and weird edge cases. If the question is simply what gives the best answer, the answer is often still a cloud model. That is not the debate. The debate is which tasks deserve the cloud. This is where local AI becomes powerful. Most developer AI usage is not one giant heroic prompt, it is 1,000 little prompts. Explain this function, summarize this log, write a commit message, convert this JSON, generate test data, draft a regex. Those prompts should not all cost money. Wait behind rate limits, leave your machine, or consume your premium model quota. That is where the M6 Mac Mini makes sense. It is not replacing Claude, GPT, Gemini, or whatever model wins next week. It is replacing waste. It is the local box that handles the everyday nonsense, so the expensive model is saved for work that actually needs it. That is the setup I think more developers should want. Local first for cheap private tasks, cloud for the hard stuff. If you think local AI has to replace every cloud model to be useful, you're setting the wrong bar. It only has to replace the boring half of your AI usage. That alone can change the bill, the latency, and the privacy story. There's a catch, and it is not small. Apple's local AI story depends on developers getting access to the performance Apple is advertising. If the 4 times AI number mostly lives inside Apple-controlled frameworks and first-party features, it is less exciting for the average local model user. The local AI community does not run on Keynote slides. It runs on llama, LM Studio, llama.cpp, MLX, weird GitHub repos, half-documented launch flags, and people posting token numbers in comments with suspicious confidence. For the M6 Mac Mini to be great, the real-world tooling has to use the hardware well. That means good Metal support, good MLX support, good quantized model support, and good enough compatibility that you're not constantly discovering the model you want runs better on CUDA. This is where Nvidia still has the boring developer advantage. CUDA is everywhere. Research code targets it, inference libraries support it first, random repos assume it exists. If you're doing AI development rather than AI usage, that matters. The Mac Mini may be a fantastic local inference machine. It may not be the best machine for every AI developer workflow. Those are not the same thing. If you're training models, fine-tuning seriously, running research code, or living inside CUDA-based tooling, buy or rent Nvidia hardware. Do not make your life harder to prove a point. But if you are a developer who wants local inference for coding, privacy, fast small tasks, and daily tooling, the Mac Mini is exactly the kind of machine that makes sense. That distinction matters. Local AI usage and AI research hardware are different categories. Most people watching this are not training frontier models in their bedroom. They want a good local assistant. For that, the Mac Mini looks annoyingly right. So what would I buy if the goal is local AI? I would not buy the cheapest M6 Mac Mini unless my budget was strict and I knew I only wanted small models. The base model is a normal dev machine. The memory upgraded model is the local AI machine. That is the line. I would prioritize memory before storage. Storage is annoying, but external drives exist. Memory is forever. Once you buy the machine, that decision is locked. So if you're choosing between more internal storage and more unified memory, choose memory for local AI. Every time. The second decision is whether to buy the M6 Mini or step up to the Pro version. For normal development plus local AI, the M6 is probably the sweet spot. If you can configure enough memory for heavier work, bigger models, serious multitasking, and longer useful life, the Pro model starts looking better. But this is where the price can get silly. Once you spec the Mini high enough, the Mac Studio starts waving from across the room. And then you have to be honest with yourself. Are you buying a daily local assistant box, or are you buying a local AI workstation? Because those are not the same purchase. For a daily assistant box M6 Mac Mini with enough memory for a workstation Mac Studio. For maximum raw AI speed per dollar, a used Nvidia desktop might still win if you know what you're doing. For learning Linux and local AI internals, a mini PC is probably more educational. For quiet, private, all-day developer AI without a tower, the Mac Mini is the cleanest answer. That is why this machine is interesting. It does not win every comparison, it wins the comparison normal developers actually live with. The bigger story is that local AI hardware is becoming normal. A few years ago, running a useful local model felt like a hobbyist project. Now the question is no longer, can normal computers run local AI? They can. The question is, which normal computers run it well enough that people use it every day? That is the shift the Mac Mini points at. The local AI node is becoming a normal object, a thing you buy, leave on, and let your tools call. And if Apple makes that boring enough, it becomes powerful. Not because Apple invented local AI, they did not. Not because M6 makes cloud models irrelevant, it does not. But because a quiet box with enough memory can move a surprising amount of developer AI work out of the cloud and onto the desk. That is the part worth paying attention to. So here's the verdict. The M6 Mac Mini is not the best AI computer. It is not the cheapest AI computer. It is not the fastest AI computer. And if you buy the wrong configuration, it might not even be a good local AI computer, but configured properly, it may be the most sensible local AI desktop Apple has ever made, and maybe the most sensible local AI desktop for a lot of developers, full stop. Because local AI does not need every machine to become a data center. It needs a practical middle, stronger than a laptop, quieter than a gaming PC, cheaper than a workstation, private enough for code, fast enough for daily use, and boring enough to leave running. That is what the M6 Mac Mini might be. The opinionated answer is this. If you want to run the biggest models, buy a Mac Studio or serious Nvidia hardware. If you want the cheapest possible local AI setup, build around used parts or a mini PC. If you want to train models, stop looking at the Mac Mini and go where CUDA lives. But if you're a developer who wants a private local AI assistant that actually fits into daily work, the M6 Mac Mini is suddenly one of the easiest recommendations in the category. Just do not cheap out on memory. That is the whole game. Apple did not make local AI magically better. Apple made the local AI box less weird, and for developers, that might matter more.